Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number BB1168 5 by 4.5 inch hinge. 5 by 4.5. Now, what is this hinge, a BB1168? Let's in every manufacturer, I think it's worthwhile to dissect the part number so that you can determine exactly what it is that you're working with. Okay? Let's hold it up and take a stare at it. Really nice hinge. A hinge like this is the good stuff, so to speak, the proverbial where the rubber meets the road. So let's dissect this. BB, that's pretty easy. It's ball bearing. The 1168 tells us that it's heavyweight. It's thicker than standard. When you have thicker than standard or heavyweight, you have 4 bearing packets. That's why there are 4. If you see 2 bearing packets, it's a standard weight hinge. If you see 4, you know it's thicker. A 5-inch hinge is going to be 190 thousandths of an inch thick. So basically just heavy on 3/16. Let's take a closer look. My caliper says 0.192. 0.192. It's probably because of just a little flare to the edge of that when that material is punched or sheared, I would think, is how this is probably manufactured by looking at the edge of it. I'm not an expert when it comes to manufacturing this material. That's kind of what it looks like. Ball bearing, 1168 tells us it's heavyweight, meaning 4 bearing packets. It also tells us that it's made of steel. The 1168 is specifically a steel-based hinge, which of course is what you'd want exclusively when you're working on fire-rated doors. If you wanted this same hinge in a stainless steel or a brass bronze-based material, it would become a BB1191, but that, pardon me, a BB1199, but that would be incorrect to use on a fire-rated door, so be mindful of that if you would. BB1168 also means it's a full mortise hinge. You can look from the swag on the hinge leafs there and see, right here, when the leafs are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. That, of course, is full mortise is one of the types of hinges. Full surface, half mortise. But a full mortise is going to be the most common type of hinge. This would be a template pattern, meaning these holes would be in the standard location for a 5-inch hinge, which we call template. And let's just look at it now. There's a link below this video to the document called template. It's a technical drawing of this hinge and the other sister products related to it that all will share the same dimensional properties as it relates to a 5-inch tall hinge. Now, speaking of moving into the part number further, 5 by 4.5. Got to be careful there now. This is a rectangular hinge. It's not square. It's not 5 by 5 or 4.5, 4.5. You have to be incredibly mindful that the height is the first dimension, not the width. The height. So it's opposite of how doors are sized. That's really important because if someone's telling you that they want a 4.5 by 4 or a 5 by 4.5 or a 5 by 8 for that matter, the height is the first dimension. Okay? Now, this hinge, when we're dealing with a 4.5 inch wide hinge and a 5-inch tall, that's a tip-off that you're dealing with certainly an 1 3/4 thick door, because a 5-inch wide would be inappropriate for an 1 3/4 thick door. Basically, the leaves are just too great, and where the screw holes would mount would run afoul of the standard backside on a door. Indeed, I happen to know that this is an incredibly large and heavy door. It's 4 foot by 7 foot, 16 gauge door, so it would be really well used when it comes to a taller hinge. There is data that states that the difference between a 4.5 and a 5-inch hinge is several percentage points greater, and the hinge's ability to carry the weight of the door, I don't recall exactly what it was, but it was something like in the 25% range. So anytime that you can use a taller hinge, that's much better. And indeed, this door being so heavy, we're doing 5-inch tall heavyweight and 4 of them. This door is going to get used a tremendous amount of use, and 70% of the door weight is literally hanging on that top hinge. So having 4 of them on there really spreads that weight out better against those top 2 hinges. Okay, so now the link to the template is really handy because you can review that and know exactly where all of the holes are for the screws, which are included. You'll generally get all machine screws and half wood screws, meaning for each hinge you'll get 8 machine screws, which would be a 1224 flat undercut head sheet metal screw. And half wood, meaning for every hinge you'll get just 4 wood screws. If you have a particular requirement for screws, indicate that in the comment field when you're adding the item to cart. Perhaps if you're doing all wood, indicate AWS, all wood screws. Or if you're doing all metal, you can indicate it, but you're going to always get all metal screws because a hinge like this would be very often used on hollow metal doors and frames. However, if you had a pair of 3-foot by 8-foot doors on the entryway, and you were doing something that caused the doors to be exceptionally heavy, perhaps adding some sort of a cladding to them, you could definitely see these hinges on wood doors as well. If you're not sure, and certainly if you're replacing the hinges, and you're not sure if your hole locations match, look at that template. Be sure so that you know what you're getting into before just ordering the material. Okay, now, looking at the rest of the extended description that's there, you'll see full mortise, steel hinge with a steel pin, 0.190, it's 0.190, considered heavyweight, ball bearing, 5-knuckle. You say why it's a 5-knuckle hinge. That's also inferred in the 1168 part of the part number. Button, pin, and tip. Button, pin, and plug. It's got a button tip. You've heard the term ball tip, steeple tip, acorn tip, urn tip. Well, there's button tip too, just the button on your coat. That's what that looks like. Should you want to drive that pin out and flip it all around, you could do so if you wanted to. If you wanted that logo to be in some other direction, whatever the case might be. Now this happens to be a security pin hinge, meaning that it's NRP. You see that there's a set screw that's there. In the pin that's installed in this hinge, it's not just a smooth shaft. There is a little notch that's ground in it so that when you tighten that set screw, it seats into that groove and then prevents you from popping the pin out. That's how that works. And I can tell you from first-hand knowledge, it may not be accurate to say it's impossible to drive the pin out, but man, you're not going to drive that pin out easily, that's for sure. It's not coming out that way, having tried to do it in the past. There are other security options, and if you're looking at a hinge like this, you'd probably want to know about those, such as a security stud. Be a large, like about the size of a dime or a nickel, round feature to the hinge, where when you close it, and there's a hole on the other side, when you close it, that big piece, that thick piece that's like a nickel, sticks into the other hinge. Even if you drove the pin out, you still could not separate the leaves as a result of that sort of option. Very unusual, but surely you can understand the need to have such a security measure on a hinge. Think about school safety, airport safety, private industry, things of that nature. Other options are available beyond that. You could technically order this with radiused corners. We've done that. I've got someone who had really big wood doors and they didn't want to square out the corners, so we ordered them 5/8 radius on these big monster hinges. There's also a link below this video to the document called Product Catalog that will allow you to review lots of different hinges from Hager, and might be worth your while just to edify yourself as to the different hinge types. Lots of 3-knuckle options, wide throw options, different base materials. 2-knuckle options as well, if you're looking for a different type of look on the scenario. Anti-friction bearings, different types of bearing types too. On a heavyweight hinge like this, while it's possible you could order a plain bearing hinge, you would never do that. There'd be no reason to do that at all. Available in all of the common finishes, your brass, your bronze, your chromes, satin and polished. Oil rubbed bronze can certainly be done as well. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Hager BB1168 5x4.5 US 2060 hinge, this hinge is in 2060, and NRP, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.